Welcome, everyone, to the Enlight Life podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Cousins, and I'm here with Korin Sutton, who I came across his post and decided to invite him onto the podcast. He is a vegan natural bodybuilder. And I'm always interested in, particularly vegan bodybuilders, not even so much because I'm here to punt veganism as the way that everybody needs to live, but simply because vegan bodybuilders tend to defy what science and many nutritionists and doctors say is possible. So I love to defy what's possible. And so welcome, Korin, and I'm excited to hear your story.
Hey, what's up? How you doing? You hear me?
Wonderful. Yes,
Okay.
I can. Yeah, there was a little bit of a lag,
Oh,
but it's okay. So yeah, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and then we can kind of get into, how did you get into veganism, bodybuilding, and how does it look differently to maybe, non-vegan bodybuilding?
absolutely. Again, my name's Korin Sutton, vegan pro bodybuilder. I'm a three-time pro bodybuilder within different federations, which is a tested federation league. Also, I'm an owner of Body HD Fitness, which is an online fitness company where we help new vegans transition into a healthy vegan and get the results that they're looking for, especially when it comes to overall lifestyle. And
Mhm.
I'm also a war veteran, so I've been in the military for about 8 years. Did 4 years United States Marine Corps, fully active service, also deployed to Operational Active Freedom 3 and 4. And then I also did the United States Navy as well. So that's
Wow.
pretty much me in a nutshell. Yep.
Amazing, amazing. And so how did you get into veganism? How did you get into bodybuilding? And maybe did they both, have you been a long-term vegan? Tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about that.
Yeah, so the whole bodybuilding thing, how I got into that really was, first I wasn't first it started when I transitioned to veganism. So bodybuilding did kind of play a way in it, but I wasn't doing it when I first transitioned into a whole foods plant-based, more into a whole foods plant-based diet. But
Yeah.
it pretty much all started when I was actually in school and Gary Roski came into the classroom. He's like a vegan activist. Highly recommend watching him on YouTube. It's called The Best Vegan Speech Ever. And
Mm.
he actually came into my classroom, did that exact speech that's on YouTube. And when I saw it, it definitely opened up my mind because there was some points that he hit that actually got me interested into the lifestyle, which was, the health reasons, medical reasons, and also how animals were being treated. And that was the first time I actually saw the reality of the treatment of animals when it came to agriculture, farm and agriculture practices. So when he exposed that to me, like, I was definitely interested in transitioning more into a vegan lifestyle. I wanted to try it out. So moving forward, I did start off as a pescatarian. Yeah, after a week watching that video, I just finished up eating all the meat that I had left inside my fridge. Started doing more plant-based foods. Started doing more fish, for protein.
Mhm.
Now, at the time, this was about like 12 years ago. You know what I mean? So the internet, social media, all that stuff was at its infant stage. Not so advanced. Information and stuff like that when it came to veganism wasn't a lot out there, even when you search on Google or Yahoo and stuff like that, on all those search engines that was out there during that time. The information wasn't there. So, I just had to do my own thing. And while I was in school as well, I was already doing like some personal training on the side as a part-time job. So for me, I was more interested in the diet as well because I wanted to see like if this is really possible. Because I did have some, I had some disbeliefs in me, and that's one of the reasons why I went pescatarian first because I was like, well, you know, I've been eating meat for over the past 25 years. I feel pretty healthy. I feel good. I put on muscle. everyone eats meat, so it's like, to me, I was like, let me see like how this works, because the last thing I didn't want to happen is to be like malnourished and get sick just from eating plants. And Gary didn't look sick at all. I mean, he looked pretty healthy. I mean, he wouldn't be up there speaking, and he's a very intelligent guy. But he did open up my mind to at least explore that world. So that's when I went pescatarian. And then while I was pescatarian, I started losing a lot of body fat. I started feeling better. I started everything started to improve. My performance and everything wasn't hindered. And pretty much 80% of that diet was already whole foods plant based, because there wasn't even a lot of vegan protein alternatives that was out there. And the ones that was out there, which I remember going to side Whole Foods, seeing like tofurkey for like $8 at the time, just for some deli slices. I was like, man, this is way too expensive. I can't do this stuff. So I was just doing mostly like the fish that I could afford, like salmon, tilapia mostly, and then everything whole foods plant based. Then eventually, once I started noticing that I was getting better aesthetics, I was feeling better, I started reducing the fish, because then eventually I started learning more about like higher plant-based protein foods like tofu and seitan, TVP, things like that. Like, because those were like the main items that was affordable, something that I can do. Protein powders. I mean, at the time, it was only like brown rice protein, which tastes like straight trash, but when I found it, I did it. I was like, hey, it's an alternative. Let's try it out. Even though it tastes like crap, I still went ahead and dived into it. Next thing you know, I'm vegan. Started doing veganism for a whole entire year. And then from that point, that's when one of my friends actually came up to me. I remember we were at the beach. I wasn't really drinking at that time, but like I was at the beach, hanging out with some friends. They were drinking. I was like kind of cutting back at that time, at that period, and we were like just like talking the shit. And freaking one of my friends actually came up to me and said like, man, you're looking good. Like, what you been doing? And I told him the same exact story. Like, well, I went pescatarian because this vegan guy talked at my classroom, and then now I'm vegan. So he's like, what? So what does that mean? And I told him what it meant. And he was like, yo, this is the best I ever seen you since, since you switched to this diet. Like, you're like ripped. You ever thought about doing bodybuilding? And I was like, nah, man. Like, because I think during that time, like Kai Green and Phil Heath was like very popular and stuff like that. And I was like, man, you know how big these bodybuilders are? Like, you see me, like, I can't do that. Like, that's insane. And he's like, nah, man, there's like different levels when you do bodybuilding. And he's like, there's different levels, different federations. And you could start off as an amateur where, it's just like people like your size, and he showed me one of his friends that was doing it. And he's like, dude, you would smoke this kid. And he's not even in that great of shape. So he showed me a picture. He wasn't really in that great of shape. And he placed like top 5. So I was like, man, like what? And the only thing I was like, I don't know how to start. Like, how do you get into that world? Like, I had no idea, like how you, because again, like the internet, things like that it's not like today, you know what I'm saying? So like, even when I was searching, I'm like, how to do bodybuilding? Like, nothing would pull up. And because even bodybuilding federations, I don't think they had like online access, and like because I think you remember during that time, like not everyone was advertising their businesses and things like that online.
Yeah, it was still everything was still pretty new.
Yeah, so like when, and then I remember looking up a bodybuilding coach, and like dude wanted, I don't know how much he wanted at the time. I think he wanted like $1,000 or $2,000 or something like that to work with him for like 4 months or something. And me, I was a college student. I was like, damn, that's too much. I can't afford that. Yeah. So I was just kind of lost. I didn't know how to get in. I didn't know like even how to find a show, because I never heard of like local shows. And And, sadly to find out, like in South Florida, we have like one of all the most shows, but during that time, I was like, I don't know where to find these things. But faith happened. Sometimes things happen for a reason. And when you have a belief
Absolutely.
and you're trying and you're really trying, when you have a real purpose and you're really looking for something, sometimes things just comes to you,
Yeah.
and that's definitely what happened to me. And in all places I was in, because during this time I was clubbing, partying, I was in my early 20s. I remember I was at the Hard Rock Cafe partying in one of the nightclubs there. And guess who came up to me? A bodybuilding coach. So it's like, yeah, out of all places, right? And like, so, and he was like dating one of my friends. She came up, introduced me to him. He gave me his number, like, because she knew I was looking for a bodybuilding coach. She's like, yo, like, here's my friend, I'm dating him, y'all should talk. And after that night, literally the next day, I called him up, and then he opened up my coach, who I'm still working with now, 10 years ago already, still working with him to this day. He opened the doors and he showed me the whole bodybuilding circuit and the world, and that's how I got into it. And he was very excited working with me at the time, because when he found out I was vegan and he saw like the muscularity and already the frame I had already, he was just like, man, this, like, he's like, if you look like this already, you're going to look amazing when I'm finished training you, or when I
Wow.
start training you to bodybuilding. Yeah. And
And
then
would you say, at some point, because this is always the question, right, that people have, was it difficult transitioning?
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well, I mean, at that time, yeah, because like I said, like I was probably in the worst position, but I think it's good that I was in the worst position when I started, because I know the struggle. So I was a college student, and so I was broke, wasn't making a lot of money. I started off with basically just conventional foods, like things that's non-organic. I mean, during that time, no one cared anyways. It wasn't even a big
yeah.
deal. So it's like people just looked at organic like that thing rots fast and it's too expensive. I'll do the conventional. That's how it was back then. So it's like no one cared. So I did that, and I was eating like vegetables and beans and stuff like that from cans because it was cheap. Maybe some frozen foods here and there. But like yeah, it was pretty difficult because I didn't understand how to incorporate, like, I didn't understand calories and macros and none of that stuff, or portion control.
Mm,
I didn't understand about how to get like enough protein in my diet. So because I got really lean, like I was at 225 when I started switching over from diet to veganism. And the time I was vegan, I think I got down to like 160. Yeah. So I
wow.
was like, I lost a lot of weight. I was very lean, because I wasn't getting a proper amount of protein, but I kept working out because I always worked out. So I was just working out, still lifting weights. My strength was the same,
Mm,
but I did get a lot smaller, and but I was ripped. But to me, I didn't care because like getting like I had like a pretty ripped six pack. I mean, comparing it to bodybuilding conditioning, it's like another level. Now I look at that like, oh yeah, it's just a normal guy with a six pack, but like bodybuilding is different. But during that time, I was pretty happy with myself. I was like, hey, I'm lean, I have a rich six pack, I'm eating the foods I like, it's not big of a deal. But if I wanted to get bigger, it would have been even a bigger issue. But at the time, it was just hard to find that balance and also learn more about recipes because I didn't know what else to cook. I was
mm,
eating a lot of just like, you could say just Buddha bowls, but it was like the worst Buddha bowls in the world. It was just like a bunch of frozen vegetables and some rice and beans and stuff, like just a bunch of stuff thrown together. It just
mm-hmm,
got down to that point while I was doing the whole vegan stuff.
mm-hmm.
But I'm not, you're talking to a guy who was in the military, so eating the same stuff wasn't really a problem, you know, like maybe pasta from time to time, things like that. But it was a lot about recipes, portion control, protein intake. Um, those was and then finding out what's vegan, what's not, because like, you know, every time I found out there was a new food that wasn't vegan because someone did some research and like called me out on it, I was like, no, you know, like, because like in the beginning I was just like, okay, no animal stuff, you know, that's easy, no meat. I could still have Krispy Kreme donuts, eating that still. Next thing you know, one of my friends
Yes, yes,
was like, you know, that
all the
has eggs and
food.
milk. Yeah, he's like, you know, that has eggs and milk. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's online. You have to check their website. You know, because back then, I'm always going to reference that. Like back then, it was hard to find stuff, and you know,
Yeah.
I went on the website and it's like eggs and milk. And I was like, no. So finish up the box, stop shopping at Krispy Kreme. And it's kind of a bummer because it's like, man, like I don't have donuts. And donuts was my jam. And I was like, man, I can't have donuts because no one's making no vegan donuts. You know, then when it came to cookies, I'm stuck with Oreos. I think that was the only thing I had for a treat was Oreos because I was like, it's all chemicals, but there's
And
no
that's why the vegan diet works so darn well, right? Or at least back then, is because you just cut out all the nonsense, all the junk. And
yeah,
so
and all the junk mostly had eggs and milk and things in it. So by
yeah.
default, you're down to a whole food plant based diet because there was no like a lot of mock meats out there or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And so how have, because obviously, things have changed, many years have passed. Now you know much better what you're doing. You've refined on all levels. So
Yeah.
what has changed, and what do you feel has made the biggest difference in your diet? What things have you learned? What foods are you eating that you would say, okay, these are the things that really make a difference on a whole food plant-based. I don't even really like the term veganism because it is so, there's so many political connotations. And so, yes, on a whole food plant-based diet. And also I kind of want to throw in here, especially for some of the listeners, because I personally also, for many years, I was a very, very strict vegan and even raw food, mostly raw foods. And then over the years, I learned for my own sake, and I'm not saying everyone should do that, but what helped me is to actually relax a little bit.
Yeah.
And for example, so I have honey, I love honey. So yes, strictly speaking, I'm not a vegan. That's why the vegan term to me doesn't even work. Whole food, plant-based, that's the way to go. And it's not a political statement. It's not an ideology. It's a lifestyle that we should call a conscious lifestyle. So on this journey, what are the key takeaways that sort of, you can share?
Well, I mean, some of the things that I learned on the way was, I think what really helped me along the way was, and I was kind of privileged in the situation I was in because once I found a bodybuilding coach, obviously he gave me a really affordable price that I could work with, and then I was in school. Now, because I was in the military, I had financial aid from the state and the military to help me pay for the majority of the school. I still had to pay for loans and things like that, but it paid for a good chunk of it. And and because of that, I was able to change my major because once I decided like I want to do this, I want to learn more on nutrition in general, because like when I saw the meal plan that my coach gave me and I saw the results, and regardless, I was eating like very bland. It was just like, because he didn't know anything about plant-based foods. He's like, what do you do for protein? He was asking me what I did, like brown rice protein powder. You know, and he's like, all right, you're going to do 60 grams of rice protein powder. Oh, man. Yeah. I'm like, for real? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Put some sugar in it or something. Okay. I'll try. You know, it's like a cardboard that's sweetened, you know? But it was
It's
like things
bad.
like that.
It's bad.
Yeah, things like that. A lot of vegetables, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. But because he fixed my macros and showed me about portion control, like how much protein I should be getting, even though it was very basic, that opened my mind. Like it has to be another way to make this better, you know.
Mm.
So that's when I enrolled and changed my major because I was like, because I saw the results. Like I started getting bigger, got even more leaner, you know, like my energy and everything was even increasing because my meals were more balanced just from little changes from what he did. And so I was like, yo, I need to learn more about nutrition. Became a nutritionist, and I'm making a long story short. Became a nutritionist, got a degree in exercise science and physiology. And through that period, that's when I started really diving more in depth into plant-based nutrition, started learning about, oh, you know, let's incorporate tofu. Now, then around less protein, I could do some tofu. Oh, there's a new supplement company that came out that's vegan. Oh, raw fusion, great. You know, like let's say throw that away, put that in there. You know, so even through time, learning about new products that was coming out because it was getting like the whole vegan stuff was becoming more popular, and replacing it with things. You know, finding out about other alternatives like tempeh and seitan. You know, restaurants. You know, started opening up, started incorporating into things like that. Products started becoming cheaper. Just doing things like that, and especially once I started making more money, started investing from conventional to organic. I started learning about the differences between the two. Just simple stuff like that. That's what helped me out the most to get me to where I'm at today. So a lot of it is just a basis is based on a lot of education of nutritional science, like because I know all the things I had to do to like really like tune up my diet. And this is someone who came from a standard American diet and transitioned to like a pescatarian diet, which the pescatarian diet was like it was easier to transition because I was just doing everything plant-based foods, but just having the fish for protein. So that was easier. But when you eliminate that, it becomes a lot harder, you know, trying to find it.
Yeah.
But again, finding out the protein sources, portion control, like how I control my calories and my calories and making sure I'm getting proper amount of vitamins and minerals, because that was one thing I never paid attention to. But
Mm-hmm.
paying more attention to it as someone who's vegan played a significant role in my health overall. Um, you know, a lot of these things really played a significant role to where I'm at, and that's what I do today. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, and to maybe go into some specifics. So, for example, do you take a lot of supplements, or do you get most of what you need from your nutrition?
Well, I mean, when it comes to supplementations, I mean, I was always an athlete for since I was born. I mean, I started playing baseball when I was 7. Started taking supplementations when I was 13 years old. So when it supplements in athletes, the confusion about that statement is that some people think that you have to take supplements as a vegan. I
Yeah.
was taking supplements even when I was on an animal-based diet. I was buying animal pack multivitamins, and my piss would come out golden yellow. And people who knows about animal pack and work out know what the hell I'm talking about. So like I used to take all the supplements, the multivitamins, creatine, whey protein shakes, you know, glutamine, all that stuff. I used to take all that stuff on an animal-based diet. The only difference is I'm taking more plant-based supplements for performance. So when it
Right.
comes to like, you know, like even some of the supplements I have behind me, like vitamin D3, cauliflower oil, subblock 80, BCAAs, these are all part of performance. You know, maybe the vitamin D, I would say the only thing for health, which is basically good for everybody to take, is like vitamin D3.
Yes.
Everyone should be taking some type of vitamin D3. When it comes to B vitamins, I believe everyone should be taking B vitamins anyways. I
Yeah.
particularly don't. I use nutritional yeast. So like the nutritional yeast has B vitamins fortified there in those foods. It's like a seasoning that you can put on your food. So you get more than enough from that. So that's why I don't take any actual B vitamins for like wellness, because I get it through the food. And then when it comes to what I was about to say. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much
Hmm.
it. But like that's the only two I would say I would take for. Oh yeah, and the ahi flower oil for your omega threes. But it's just like I'm taking ahi flower oil on an animal based side. I was taking fish oil,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
most people do anyway. So that's the only thing I like to clear up is like technically you don't, but there's certain supplements that's recommended regardless if you're on a plant based diet or not. You know.
I agree with you. And I think that's often, this misconception or this idea that people like to throw out there. Oh, well, you're on a plant-based diet, therefore you're supplementing. Well, people on a non-plant-based diet, should and mostly do, and that's because our food sources, soils are deprived, and so forth, and many different reasons. So it is very, very easy to become deficient, certainly in the basics. And I agree with you, whether you're vegan or non-vegan, you're gonna, if you're clever, at some point you're gonna have to supplement certain things depending on your particular situation, lifestyle, genes, etc. um, and what I kind of want to sort of pick out, because there's so much misconception around soy products, tofu, tempeh, all of that, right? And I have to say, I myself, even when I was already on a whole food plant-based diet for many years, I really demonized soy. And it was only once I went into perimenopause and I started looking at hormone balance and I looked at all the studies and all the information out there. Wow, soy is actually incredible at balancing hormones because it gives us phytoestrogens. And whereas, so the misconception is, oh my gosh, you're plant-based as a man, especially you eat soy, you're gonna get man boobs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's this kind of, oh, man boobs and oh, soy, and there's all these negative connotations. The worst one being soy is gonna give you cancer. And here I want to point out, well, animal-based products are far more estrogenic, but far more than phytoestrogens, right? So and I mean, I don't think you got man boobs going on. I don't think you have. Do you? So what is your yeah? What can you say about the misconception around soy?
When the only thing I could say is basically on the same points of what you're saying. Like, yeah, there's a lot of study that does state the opposite when it comes to soy. Especially like the Harvard study. There's a Harvard study that's out there that definitely talks about soy as well, and pretty much states that the only estrogenic things that mostly has in it is really the phytoestrogens, and phytoestrogen is a plant hormone and it doesn't have any negative effects to human hormones, which that's what it states in the study. And also there's tons of benefits in soy, especially soy protein like B vitamins, fiber, potassium, magnesium. It's a great high source of protein as well, and it actually helps lower cholesterol levels because it has no cholesterol in it, and it's definitely great for, and it's a complete protein. It's powerful, and it's a powerful protein that has tons of amino acids, all the essential amino acids that you need, especially when it comes to building muscle. So when it comes to tofu and soy, it's made from soybeans. Some people think that it's highly processed. It's not highly processed. It's literally just soybeans. You can literally make it at home, blend it up in a food processor or a Vitamix, and add some naragi and strain it and soak and strain, and you got some tofu. You know what I'm saying? It's basically that's all it is. So there's things with tofu that it has tons of healthy benefits in it, and it's not as bad. And like, I could use myself, like my testosterone levels and everything is very high. It's I think right now it's at a well, the last time I checked was in November. I just finished doing a bodybuilding show, so it was like at eight. I think it was like eight something. Like, oh man, I think it was like 840 or 889, somewhere around there. Um, which is fairly high, and my free testosterone was in great range. And sex hormone buying goblin was also in a good range as well. We kind of, I know, and total testosterone was in good range. Kind of, some people go, if he didn't know total testosterone and all this stuff, and free testosterone. So all of them was in optimal levels. And yeah, and then also I always tell individuals that soy is highly consumed in the eastern part of the world, and also in most blue zones, and they don't. And when if you do some research in blue zones, and especially like the eastern part of the world, their issues when it comes, their health issues when it isn't like cancer, it's more they have issues with people living too long. It's the longevity factor. There's a lot of centenarians that live over 100. And if you see these blue zones, majority is on a whole foods plant-based diet, or majority of their diet is whole foods plant-based. If they are eating meat or something like that, it's very, very small consumptions of it, but majority of their diet is whole foods plant-based, and there's no like processed foods and stuff like that as well. I mean, there's other factors that does play a role when it comes to living over 100, like lifestyle, stress, interaction with people and things like that. And those are other significant factors. Also, being active is another important factor as well. So there is some factors and pillars that does involve in living longer, but food does play a significant part as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So but when you look at the West, and you could Google it, just like put in blue zones and Google it, and it'll show you a map of the world, and it's going to be all different colors. And people who, one of the ones that's in the reds is like US. It's like very dark red, because we're literally number one in consumption of meat, and we have the highest rate, especially when it comes to colon cancer. Like colon cancer is like literally the highest number.
Yeah.
So when it comes to estrogen and stuff like that, I always say a lot of estrogenic levels, it's not strictly straight from meat, but it's definitely from like overconsumption and being obese and lack of activity. There's also other factors that does playing a role, because the only food that I know through studies that states that with meat, well, if it's like not even meat, the only food that I know from studies that actually help promote estrogenic levels is like beer, because of the hops and stuff like that. That's actually estrogenic, like truly estrogenic alcohol.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any studies really correlating meat to it, but definitely being obese and lack of activity and overconsumption of red meat, processed meat, pork, lamb, and then and junk food can play a role in estrogenic levels rising for sure, because you're just not moving. And when you're overweight and you're obese and you lack activity, your hormones will change. And this is something that I even tell my own students as well. If they're training with me, I tell them, like, if you're bulking, you don't want to do a dirty bulk, because if you put on too much body fat, then your hormone levels can change. And now all that working out, because you have all this body fat on you, it's counterproductive, because you're not optimizing your muscular gains, because the way to build more muscle, you have to have good testosterone, well, it will play a very beneficial role when it comes to building muscle,
And how would you say, has your work, do you have your workouts changed, or do you train plant-based diet clients different, or would you say the training is the same?
My training is a lot different now versus before, but that really has nothing to do with the diet.
Mm.
Because the thing is that I'm in a sport where there's people bigger than me, you know what I'm saying? So, and everyone has their own training regimen in the field of bodybuilding. And in sports, it's really hard to correlate anything because there's many factors. There's diet, sleep, wellness, you know, food, what they're eating. So like when it comes down to it, like, you know, can people, like, the only thing I could say is like there is one study that's out there that does state, like, you know, it's a protein study where and I forgot who wrote it because I just did a video on it, but like there's a study that came out stating that when it comes, they're comparing meat, animal-based protein to plant-based protein. And it was a study based on, I think it was like 20 athletes, and they wanted to see who can build muscle faster, and they both built the same amount of muscle, you know. So that's the only study that can base on like food and results. But when it comes to performance, that's hard to scale because, again, there's so many life factors like experience
Yeah.
level, coordination, you know, like there's so much to measure. And when I do bodybuilding shows, like I'm not like, even though I'm vegan, I'm not going against other vegans, you know. I'm going against just other people, you know. They could be vegan, they could be eating meat, they could be keto, paleo, like whatever, I don't know. Like it's irrelevant actually
Yeah.
in the sport. I'm just trying to win because I have a personal thing that I'm trying to represent. I'm just trying to show people that, look, like, you can build muscle and be fit and perform at a high level on a plant-based diet, and be vegan. Like that's my message. But
Yeah.
like, but that's pretty much it. I'm not trying to throw it into other competitors' face that I'm better than them, because that first is bad sportsmanship, number one, and number two, it's a sport, and we're all just trying to. We all have different purposes when we're on that stage competing. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
mhm.
Yeah, and I do think that is an important message, that I share as well. For me, it's not about converting or preaching or saying that veganism is even better than non-veganism. To me, it's not about that. It's about demonstrating that we can be absolutely healthy in peak performance whilst being on a plant-based diet. And to me, that when people can let that message in, so instead of making it about veganism versus meat eating,
Yeah,
there's no competition. It's not about being superior, inferior, whatever. It's about, can we open our minds to the fact that, hey, we can be healthy that way. So what does that mean? And that it should, if anything, it should open our mind, make us more conscious, ask questions, because the minute that we close off to something, we're actually taking away from so many possibilities. And so I like the way that you also put it. It's not about competition or better. It really is about, hey, this is possible, and that alone should tell us a lot and kind of get us to ask questions. So what would be your, well, actually, I wanted to ask you one more question
yeah.
before we kind of close off. I wanted to ask you, do you ever have the feeling or the yearning even to not be plant-based whole foods anymore and to eat other foods, or to kind of, do you ever feel like, oh, I'm done with this lifestyle?
No, no, I never had those thoughts because once I decided to go vegan, like I told myself this is for life, and especially with the knowledge that I have, and the continuing knowledge I continue to educate myself. It's not. I mean, yeah, I'm vegan for the animals, but it's just like there's also a lot of studies and evidence that when it comes to longevity, you know.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. And now when it comes to longevity, like I always tell people, like, look, like I'm vegan because I have an ethical stance, but also I do for health as well. But when it comes to other people, and because of my job, I'm also a nutritionist, I always try to tell individuals that if you want to continue to eat animal-based protein, um, I would definitely minimize it and still incorporate more plant-based foods.
Yeah.
You don't have to have meat every single day. You could still incorporate a chicken breast or a piece of steak or whatever. But try also rotate it with other plant-based options. And
Absolutely.
and I know, like, when it comes to the vegan community, like, some people don't like that approach or how I teach people, but I'm like, this is the conversation I have with people offline. Yeah. So
Yeah.
why I'm going to censor myself and then try to create this character online just so other people can please me? I don't care. Um, all I'm trying to do is help individuals. I'm trying to help other people. And how I look at it at the end, like, personally, if you ask me, would I wish for more people to just not eat meat altogether? Yeah, because there's more lives to be saved. But at the same time, if I could get someone to even reduce their meat intake and start exploring more into plant-based options, that's already a win as well. Because again,
Yeah.
I was in the military for 8 years. So, like, when it comes to, and I was in war. So when it comes to casualties and things like that, like, sometimes you have to make the hard calls. It's not, sometimes you can't save everybody. Like, that's the reality. You can't save everyone, but you can save as many as you can, and
Yeah.
that's how I look at this situation as well. Like, yeah, I know. And I'm not trying to throw any shade to animal activists or anything out like that, because I feel like, they're doing a good job. They're in the forefronts and, showing people the truth, but not everyone reacts to that because, people look at animals, like, not all animals, but particular animals, pigs, cows, chickens, and fish, that's food. Yeah. They
Yeah.
and some people would literally tell other activists or vegans in their face, they're raised for food, but they get killed. They get that. I don't know. It sucks, but it's food. Like, it's just concrete in their mind. So sometimes you have to hit a different approach, because to that approach, you show them videos, you show them a bunch of stuff, and it's not going to affect them. It's just like a concrete wall. So you have to go a different route. And that's where I come in. I'm like, well, look at your health. Yeah, right? You eat all this meat, you got diabetes, you got cancer, you're on all these meds. I mean, what do you want to do? You want to try to continue to do this on the diet you're on, or you want to try something different? Because from what I've heard already, you tried it all. You tried keto, you tried paleo, you tried Mediterranean diet, you tried everything that had meat in it, and you failed. Why not try
Mhm.
something that had no meat in it for once? And more likely, if you're willing to help that person, and their life, their own life was changed, what do you think in their internal story, how they're going to process veganism? They're going to process it like, maybe I don't need it anymore. Like, I was, and for them in their mind, and how their story plays out in their mind is like, I tried it all and nothing worked, and that's why I went vegan. And then
Absolutely.
when they see their own personal benefits and their health increase, maybe by then, now they can open up more to the animals, because I run a business, so I see this all the time with my students. Not everyone is vegan. Some people are transitioning, and they want to learn more. So, but
Yeah.
they want to help themselves before they help any animals, you know. And if I help them, they're more open when it comes to the animals after that, because now they're healthy. They have one less thing to worry about, which is their selves. And now and because people are selfish, that's just the reality. So it's like,
100%.
yeah, some people might think it's bad, sometimes good. It depends on the scenario, but that's the reality. And how I look at it is like, hey, now their mind's more open, because they're like, yo, this diet saved my life, so at least I can save others. And that's the seed I kind of plant into the people who actually work with me. And that's some
Yeah.
of the books I pretty much teach.
100%. I'm absolutely with you. My own journey was I came to a whole food plant-based diet, not for the animals, I have to admit, but for
Mhm.
my own selfish reasons, because nothing else was working. And, in fact, I used to say, those vegans, my husband and I both, we used to say like those vegans, those are like a bit weird, a bit extreme. And before we knew it, we were basically for 5 years we were mainly raw food and high fruit and all the things. And yes, it's changed our lives, and that then opens up the mind, just like you say, to the rest of the information. And I really feel that it's a great approach, because it's a deductionist approach. There's no there's no philosophy or politics behind it. It's just like, here's your own experience, and nothing beats that. No one can now go and teach me otherwise. And it's just, well, the own experience teaches us. So maybe in closing, and I really, I really appreciate your journey. I appreciate the way that you go about it. I feel we need more people like that, because I am so over the diet war, right? The war on diets out there. People, who screams louder? Veganism is the way. No, meat eating is the way, and whoever is bigger or louder and has more followers. It's like, no, we need to see things on a continuum, and we need to learn the real information and take real information. Yeah, the real information. What I absolutely, what drives me nuts is when the meat brigade wants to still say, oh, you can't be healthy on a whole food plant-based diet. It's like, okay, dudes, those days are over. We can no longer make those statements, because there's so many people now on a whole food plant-based diet that have been thriving like you for 10 years, for 12 years, for 20 years. I know someone who's been thriving for 50 years. I know that person personally, and just kind of to throw it in, and they are blood type O, which we shouldn't be able to thrive on a whole food plant-based diet if you're O blood type. So we've broken through so many of these myths. And I feel what we all need to do is, go, okay, all these possibilities are there. And then I can still make my choice and go, well, I choose not to do that because, but we can't dismiss whole food plant-based diets just, with one sentence, oh, well, soy boy, or, these kind of things that really make no more sense. So I
Well,
thank you for your approach.
I like to add in something in that, because to me, I don't mind. Like, I guess because I'm on social media, so it's like I get a lot of heat all the time. But the thing is, like, I don't mind when people say things like that. Like, they could call me names, whatever. That's just part of social media. Like, you put yourself out there, the bigger you get, the more hate you're getting, and it's part of growth. You know what I'm saying? It means
Yeah,
that you're doing something right. Because if everyone agrees to everything that you do, then maybe
for sure.
maybe you're not going to get the attention that you deserve. But another thing I like to add is, like, when there is individuals that's on the polar opposite of veganism or a plant-based diet, and they're screaming out loud about you have to eat meat and stuff like that. I mean, I always say this, like, let them, like, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, I always say this, like, whatever diet you choose, they all work. You just have to find the one that's going to work for you. So,
Yes.
like, if they want to try some carnivore diet, try it. But you could go ahead and believe in your own hype, and if you do go down that route, and even though there's studies that state one thing, and you want to go down that route, let them find out the other way, because usually
Yeah.
some people need to find out on their own. And because I could sit here and say the same thing over and over and over again, and it has happened. I've seen it happen multiple times. Like, clients who've been following me for years, or someone who used to talk bad, and then they're like, bro, like, dude, like, something happened. I had a heart attack. Oh man, what happened? Yeah, like, I was following this dude, and I tried this keto diet, and um You know, I was doing CrossFit, and this literally happened. Like I had a client who actually was doing CrossFit, was doing keto diet, perfect shape, ripped six pack, everything, and had a heart attack right there on the gym floor. You know, he survived obviously, and then he came to me to do the plant-based diet. And when I saw that, it definitely told me like, yeah, you know, just like everything in life, like sometimes you can lead a horse to a water, but you can't make it drink unless it's until it's thirsty.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so it's the same thing with people too. Like, and unfortunately, you know, like I know I have to say this as well, for vegans who's listening. I mean, unfortunately, there's many lives that has to be sacrificed for that person to wake up. But there's sometimes some people don't,
Yeah.
you know, and that's the cards that they choose, you know. And that's just how it is, you know. So it's like how I look at it at the end of the day is like, you know, let people choose their deck of cards, you know, and see where it takes them. And if it leaves them in a bad way, if they're more interested in longevity, because I've, yeah, and I think like this, because I've been in the health and fitness industry for over a decade, and like when it comes to health in general, some people care, some people don't, you know.
True.
So and so it's just like, so that's why it's hard to transition, like like you have to try different pathways when it comes to people transitioning vegan, because the whole vegan thing does, I mean, there is an ethical part, but there's also a health portion too. And
Yeah.
some people, it's the same thing. Like some people care and some people just absolutely don't, man. It's just like, it's ingrained. And the reason I know this is too, because I was on a TV show called Veganville, where, you know, just that you think meat eaters is bad, like talk to a farmer. Some farmers is like very indoctrinated, you know, because
Hmm.
killing animals and slaughterhouse, that's it's part of farm life. And
Yeah.
and some of these farms are generations, like it's been passed down like 10 generations. So this is all they know. They don't know nothing else. So you talking about veganism and saving, it's like foreign language to these guys, you
Of
know.
course, of course. They can't let the information in, you know. And in some ways I even understand it. It's like, you know, you've been doing this, like you said, for generations, it's your livelihood. You can't even let the information in, because what does it mean for my livelihood?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
it's too
all they
big.
know. So it's like, and like when I say that's all they know, like people are like, well, they could just grow a hemp farm. I'm like, bro, they don't even know when to start. Like
Yeah.
you, that's like, it's like these guys are like, all they know is this. Like they were like their uncle did this when, and then their dad did this, and great granddad, and the great granddad, and this has just been passed out, and like telling them to like swap everything up. And there's a lot of, it's like a big old onion. There's so many layers that has to be peeled.
Hmm.
Not saying that there hasn't been farmers. I mean, I've seen in news articles farmers who started like they were cattle ranchers and went straight into you know, plant-based foods, you know, like they're doing hemp or, you know, just vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. I've seen those, but you know, like I said, like in that show, I was in Cardiff in the UK, and you know, that's like farm territory, and they do a lot of lamb there. And I talked to some of those guys, you know, and it was just like, and I get it, you know, like, you know, like when you're just kind of open and listen to other people's stories and where they're coming from on the other side, like when they said that, I'm like, yeah, you know, like it's not saying I am agreeing, but I do understand, you know,
Yeah.
like why it's so hard for some of these people to switch over, you know, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Well, beautiful, Corin. I so enjoyed this conversation, and I feel it was such a beautiful, well-balanced message for people. And you know, that's all we can do, right? We can open people's mind, we can give people this beautiful message and testimony. And then, like you said, everybody needs to decide for themselves. And sometimes it's just not the right time. You know,
Yeah.
my kids, my kids were so funny, because they were plant-based for many, many years. And at some point when they were teenagers, they came to us, and they're like, I loved how they did it. They're like, Mom and Dad, when did you become healthy eaters, right? When did you start your healthy lifestyle? And I was like, well, I was 40 and I had to become bedridden to start it. And my daughter was like, well, we're teenagers and we're healthy now and we want to try some animal products. So, and she kind of was like, well, you started when you were 40, and I'm now, 11 or however else old she was. She's like, I got a lot of time until I get to 40. And so she wanted to, and I couldn't say anything. It was like, okay, I get it. You've been on a plant-based diet. You want to try because you see everybody else, and so off they went. They had to do their experimentation.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair enough.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
sometimes it can have a negative effect if I mean, it's like with anything, right? Sometimes it could have its own negative effect as well. I mean, I know, some parents would do the same thing, but maybe try to like, because I've students with children, and this same scenario happened as well, and only thing I would suggest is like, like maybe take them to animal sanctuary,
yeah,
see if they get any connection from that, and say, and just, you don't have to take them to a slaughterhouse and, like, but like, definitely to a sanctuary and let them see that, especially if they were vegan for a pretty good while, living with
yeah,
you, and just show them, be like, hey, that chicken breast you had, like these are the chickens, and then if they build that same connection, especially if you have pets and stuff, they have that same connection, then maybe they might feel a little bad and feel a little guilty and like, man, I didn't know, like these chickens were
absolutely,
like, so you're telling me these chickens here are pretty much the same chickens that's like in the grocery store or people are eating. It's like, yeah, and look how nice they
yeah,
are, and it kind of opens their eyes a little bit more. They're, open up their mind more when it comes to life, because I feel like that's one of the best things to really open up people's mind. Because I know for me, one thing that opened up my mind is when I started traveling. When I started traveling around the world, opened up my mind, started having a better understanding about people and diversity and traditions and religions and stuff like that, and not so closed minded. And because I feel like when people are closed minded and they're so strong on a particular stance, it's just pure ignorance.
it is. I agree with you. Well, thank you, Karen. I appreciate you coming on my podcast, and I wish you so much success. And I'm so grateful to know that someone like you is out there doing what you're doing. And I'm sure we'll have other conversations in the future.
Yeah, no
Thank
doubt.
you so much for joining me.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for
you for
your
having me.
time.
Yeah, thank you. Peace.
Thank you, Karen. I did stop, right? Yeah.
No, they didn't.